Kirst, and welcome to my yard.
So my name is Vitold, people call me Vit.
This is a 20-year project. It's been just fun for me. I started with grass, just lawn, and I've been slowly incorporating all kinds of different perennials and natives, vegetable garden in the back, just to make it a more interesting and fun place to be. So as you can see, I've got a wide variety of different plants. So I have things that bloom at all different times, just to give people something pretty to look at any time of the year.
So I've been living here for about 15 years. Throughout the years, I've been adding a little more plants, and actually I started with hardly anything. I had pretty good grass and lawn here, and then it was really nothing up front, and then over the years I just added more perennial stuff and also trees and shrubs, and primarily focusing on fruit, right? And recently, the last 5 years, I've been focusing on perennial native plants, basically. So the reason I'm doing this, because part of the reason is because I grew up basically with a garden. My parents had a garden plots similar to Community Crops, except bigger. And we always had seasonal, basically menu, and that was part of because of gardening. So I think it's a big part of it. Why? So I have a little bit of that too. Besides not edibles, but obviously I do have mostly fruit trees and fruit shrubs. One is that we have water. We pay for water. Why not utilize it for something you can eat and you can benefit? Plus you have diversity, you have insects, you have birds, and particularly in native material, native plants, I think you really increase the diversity, benefit this environment, and that's good for everyone, so not only for me.
Yeah, so I get people asking me, well, why do you plant all this stuff? For me, there's a couple reasons. One, I just never liked mowing or watering grass. It just felt useless to me. So for me, I really wanted natural stuff that would attract pollinators, attract wildlife. I just enjoy a variety of plants. I mean, grass is boring. So just bringing in different colors, different sizes, shapes, that sort of thing. And I think then also it's, bringing in the native plants and making it an educational space. So I don't use exclusively natives, but I do use a lot of them, and they get a lot of interest. So then I can say to somebody, oh yeah, that's a really pretty plant. You could grow it in your yard and encourage more native usage that way.
I don't use any chemicals, any fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, there's nothing here. So, grass is certainly not perfect, but I haven't fed it for like 10 years maybe, and it's still green and still living. And I'm actually replacing it slowly.
So I get people asking me, this looks like a lot of work. And one thing I really want to emphasize is it has been 20 years. So when I started, this was all grass. And so I just started with the parts of the grass that looked the worst. And there was a space over there where there's now a tree. I dug up, got it in the middle of the lawn, and planted flowers. And then the parking strip, that grass died off. And so I planted things there because that's a terrible place to grow grass. And so for a few years, I would say probably 5 years, there were patches in different spots. It was not the best, it was not landscaped. But then I did what I could. I was doing this all myself. And so as I got more plants, as I had more time, I would dig up new spaces, bring in new plants. And then as I got further along, then I could merge those patches and turn them into one big one. So what I really tell people is don't start with trying to do your whole yard. You'll be completely overwhelmed. Start with an area and move to that. And now what's great is this is much easier to maintain. I can leave this for a month and it'll be fine. There are a few weeds because the plants have filled in. It does not need any watering. I never water this area once a plant is established. And so I can just ignore it if I'm out of town or whatever. And so that has actually now is less maintenance, I think, than taking care of a yard.
So I really started to add more and more of everything. I have to say that I never really had any plan. So I just tried something. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I change. I did actually have a bunch of volunteer trees, like red buds, that I let it grow and then I cut them down because they were not in the right place. And some of the trees didn't really do too well, but I'm just trying to displace grass primarily.
I've often gotten questions like, what do your neighbors think of this space? And really, I haven't gotten any negative feedback. Now, I'm sure that people have thought it. One of the things that I really try to do is keep it looking like it's maintained. So I do try to cut things back. I really try to make sure the sidewalk stays clear, just to make it look like somebody's maintaining it. But I will honestly say, it's funny, I will see people walking down the sidewalk and they will just slow down and look and, and if I'm out here, I always get questions, what plant is that? How could I do this? So really people are interested, and I'm working on trying to get some more signage in the yard so that people can learn more if I'm not out here. So I think people have really received it well and enjoyed it.
So that's part of the reason not to really use any chemicals, because then you have collateral damage if you try to focus on something that bugs your trees or fruit. But particularly with native material, you see a lot of insect population and diverse. I don't know where they come from, but you can see I'm sort of surrounded by typical, lawn and very little else. So, and then, people I think stop by and they're generally nice. Never really had any bad comments, and I always invite people to eat fruit, and they're always tickled. They ask me a question about what it is and what kind, and they're very, very, very pleasant. So I haven't had any negatives that I can tell.
So definitely one of the changes I've seen in the yard is the wildlife that comes in. Not so much the big wildlife, but the small things. So just the number of pollinators, the number of butterflies that my yard attracts compared to a grass lawn. There are flowers here with nectar. So just lots and lots of different bees and butterflies and moths. It's really fun to watch them, and that it attracts people too. They're always fascinated to watch all the different pollinators, so that's fun too.
Because most of my plants are perennials, the trees, so you think about, you don't have to plant every year. You really don't have any need for water. Generally, plant or trees especially establish, and they just really don't need much, unless there's a severe drought. So it's just no input. So a bit of a permaculture, I guess, and that's something I would recommend. The other thing is I have trees that actually provide like a filtered sunlight. So I notice big difference. For example, grass is still here, but it doesn't require much water. Last year maybe watered 3 or 4 times. This year, who knows, maybe more. But it helps quite a bit just to keep it alive when you have a filter shade, and you can still do a little bit of understory.
So if you want to get started on something like this, I really recommend starting small. You want to keep it manageable and something you can maintain. I also recommend starting with plants rather than seeds, because it's really hard when you plant wildflower seeds to know what's coming up. I made that mistake multiple times. But find another gardener. People always have extra plants to share. Find something that they can give you, and just get started. Plant that, learn how to take care of whatever that is. Start with one area of your yard, and then you can expand.